Hey everybody, it's Mr. Richards here, and I'm going to go through Lesson 16. Now, Lesson 16 has got some information about mouse input, but it's also going to take you through the if-else statements, which are critical for the Lesson 17 project. So while I'm still going to make Lesson 16, the assessment on Lesson 16, an extra credit, you still need to do Lesson 16, otherwise you won't have any idea how to use this if and else. And it's pretty straightforward, okay? So, this first one is a prediction. It's asking you to look at the if-else starting on block 10 and predict what's going to happen. And if you know what the words if and else mean, like when we're just using them and speaking to each other, you can just actually read this if-else statement and kind of get an idea what's going to happen. So if the key down, so if we press the space bar, that balloon scale is going to increase, because this is an increasing counting pattern because I have a plus sign here. Else, or else, so if the spacebar is not being pressed down, then our balloon scale is going to decrease because we have a minus sign here. So let's run this. Look at that. When I don't press the spacebar, the balloon shrinks. When I do press the spacebar, the balloon grows. It's really as simple as that. Okay. So this is the if-else statement. Now you only have one conditional here, the key down. So we're saying if we press the spacebar, the first part is what happens when we are pressing the spacebar, so when this condition is true. The else statement is what happens when we're not pressing the spacebar, when this condition is false. So whatever condition you put in here, if it's true, we do the first one. If it's false, we do the else statement, okay? All right, so that's the first part. Now we have a great video for part 2. I would really suggest that you watch it. If you do watch this video, you may not need to finish up with this video walkthrough that I'm doing right now because, you know, whatever. Okay, so starting with part 3 here, there's a couple of tweaks that I want you to keep track of in this lesson, and one of them is that we're going to try to work around the mouse work here because you don't really have a mouse on your iPads, and I kind of will show you how to do that. There's a couple of these lessons you might just have to skip. So we're saying the gears now spin in one direction when you press a spacebar, and they don't spin when you don't press a spacebar. So there it is. Press, release, okay. We want them to spin the other direction when the spacebar isn't pressed. Okay, so if I'm pressing the spacebar, we want them to rotate this way. If I'm not pressing the spacebar, I want them to all rotate the other way. Okay, so I'm going to go down here and find my if statement, and here it is. And you notice at the bottom of that if statement, there's a little plus button. If you click that, it becomes an if-else. Okay, and you can actually add several if-elses, but we're not going to get into that now. All right, so we're just going to add one else. And we are going to copy and paste these counting patterns into this else statement. Now, I'm going to do this by converting to text, using my copying and paste command, and then modifying the plus and minus signs. So I'm going to go to show text. I'm going to take these 3 lines here. I'm going to copy and paste them inside the else statement. So that's after the opening bracket and before the closing bracket. Then I'm going to change each one of these signs to the opposite. So the minus becomes a plus, the 2 pluses become minus. Then I can go back to show blocks, and I've got these here. Don't worry about these little gray boxes. They don't do anything, okay? So let's reset and run, and you now see that the gears are going to rotate when I'm not pressing the spacebar, and when I do press the spacebar, they rotate the opposite direction. Okay, so that's how this if-else statement works. So move on to the next one. Okay, and I want to make sure I start from the beginning. Okay, so this is the same program as the gear program that we just saw. We're going to look at line 13 and figure out what's different, and I'll make it easy for you. In this case, we're using the mouse down button. Okay, so if you have a mouse connected to a computer, you have this button. Now on your iPads, I think you can kind of use your finger, but that's all this is doing. When we click on the screen and I'm clicking with my mouse, they rotate, okay? And we can make it so that, you know, when there's no user input, it goes the other way. This is one of the lessons that I think you can skip if you want to, or you can replace the mouse down with something else, honestly, but it's exactly the same as part 3. It's just teaching you that if you had a mouse connected, you could use that mouse down button. Okay, so I'm going to just move on to part 5. All right, so on this one, start from the beginning. Okay, so the balloon, or drops balloon down the screen, make the balloon go up and down according to whether the user is pressing the mouse. Okay, so again, it's telling you to use the mouse command. Since you don't have a mouse on your iPad, we're probably going to want to use a space bar or something like that. So I'm going to drag in my if statement. Actually, I'll use an if else, and I'll put that right here. And we'll put that balloon dropping in the else section because we want the balloon to go up when we are pressing the button. Okay, so I'll bring that in real quick. I'll grab my x equals, and we'll say balloon dot y equals balloon dot y minus 1. Okay, and then we'll drag in key down space. Okay, now this is not what it's telling you to do. It's telling you to use a mouse button, but again, the mouse button is probably going to be pretty glitchy on the iPad, so I'm just going to use the key down space. And the way this works now is that I'm not pressing the space bar, and so it's following the else section. If I do press the space bar, it's going to follow the first part, or the true section. So that's how we can control this balloon moving up and down. Now, if you can imagine a side-scrolling background going, we're getting pretty close to doing a Flappy Bird thing here, okay? All right, so let's finish, move on. Okay, so this one is another if-else sort of situation, and we're using now the mouse location, okay? And again, this can be kind of glitchy, but if you take a look here, we've got 2 mouse locations. And what this is going to do is just report or kind of tell the computer where the mouse is located on the screen. So you can see I'm dragging my mouse around, and the X and Y coordinates that you see here are where the mouse is located, okay? And we can use that to make some true or false statements inside our if loop. So for example, when we run this, if my mouse is past the center line on the left, the blender shakes, okay? And you can see that this is the code that does it. If world.mouse x, so if the x coordinate of the mouse is less than 200, so if it's on the left side here, and I can show the grid, 200 is right down the middle. So if I'm on the right side, nothing. If I'm on the left side, it shakes, okay? And we're saying that, you know, the shaking happens by giving the X and Y position of the blender a random number between 95 and 105, and a Y position random number between 295 and 305. Okay, so if we want to give this another statement, all right, and say, all right, make it the mixer shake, okay, we can add an else and then just put in these other 2 things here. We've got a blender and a mixer, so I'll put in 2x equals and get this written in. I've got mixer.x equals mixer random number, and I'm guessing the x position of this blender is around 295, so we'll do 295 to 305 for the x position, and mixer.y is going to be the same as the blender because they're the same height on the screen, so that'll be random number, also 295, 305. Okay, let's run it. So yep, if I'm on the left side, we get a shaking blender. If I'm on the right side, or basically if I'm not on the left side, so the only place you can be is on the right side, we get a shaking mixer. All right, that's fun. Let's move on. Okay, so here's two more with the mouse button. So we got our first is a ladybug walk. All right, and what we want to do is have the ladybug move only when the mouse is near the bottom of the screen. So that's going to be very similar to the part before, number 6. The difference is that instead of giving it a random number, we're just going to give it a counting pattern. That's going to be an x subtracting, because we want the x value to decrease as we go from right to left. So we'll drag down a if statement. We'll use the world mouse y, because where the mouse is going to be up and down. So if world mouse y, and it's much easier to type this in, honestly. So if world mouse y is greater than 300, so if we're on the bottom part of the screen, then we are going to make that ladybug. We got bug.x equals bug.x minus 3. All right. And what's wrong here? World mouse is undefined. World mouse y, okay. I put in a dot instead of capital Y. There we go. Okay, so here we go. We'll bring that mouse down. As soon as it gets past 300, we should see a moving ladybug. There it is. Pretty cool. All right. And ghost moving with the mouse. Okay, in this level, you'll make the ghost move either left or right, depending on the position of the mouse pointer. In the example shown, if the mouse pointer is on the left, the ghost moves left. The opposite is also true. Okay, so we've already got our counting patterns, which is nice. So I'm going to give it a conditional statement here. All right, we'll put in the minus here, the plus here, and we're dragging in the mouse again. It might work on your screen with your finger on your iPad, but if it doesn't, I guess just watch the video. It's better to just type it in. World mouse x is, let's see, less than 200, I think. Should make it move to the left, and if we want it to move to the right, let's see, yep, there we go. See how I'm moving my mouse, and when my mouse is on the left half, it moves to the left, and if my mouse is on my right half, it moves to the right. Okay, again, a lot easier to do on a computer than on a iPad. Okay, so this program should only shake the creature when the mouse is pressed and only show directions when the mouse is not pressed. Okay, so we want a conditional in here. Now, I'm not going to do this for you, but I will give you some tips, because this is the purple circle. So shake the sprite when the mouse is pressed. We definitely need a conditional statement in here that shows creature.rotation, all right, equals random number if mouse button is pressed. So that's your if statement. And then we have our this text down here that we want to disappear. So this text should be part of the else statement. So if we're clicking the mouse, we're going to shake the creature. If we're not clicking the mouse, we want this text to show up. Okay. There's one other thing that you're going to have to play with, and that is, where do you put the draw sprites command? You'll have to figure that one out on your own. Okay, let's take a look at a couple of these challenges, all right? I'm going to follow the mouse, okay? Because this is actually really, really useful to know, all right? And this is a part of a larger one. So they're giving us nothing here, aren't they? The B image is already loaded into the animation tab. Okay. So we need to get that sprite drawn and the animation set. We'll call it B. We'll call this B. And the animation is B. Okay. So now what we want to do is draw a background, and it looks like they have the background of blue, or probably sky blue. Does that work? Yeah, that's about the right color. Okay, and then we want to make sure we draw our sprites. That's the last line of code, and there's our B. Now, our B location is going to just follow the world mouse X and world mouse Y. And we don't actually need an if statement for this, okay? We just need a couple of variables. Okay, so I'm going to put those in, all right? And we're going to say b.x equals world mouse X, and b.y equals world mouse Y. And so what this is going to do is it's going to put that B wherever the mouse is. And you can see on the bottom, put the grid, you can see on the bottom of the screen, right down here under the reset, it's telling me where my X and Y coordinates are. Okay, so if it knows where the mouse is, and I'm saying wherever that mouse X is, put that B there, and wherever that mouse Y is, put that B there, when I reset it, whenever I move my mouse around, it's going to draw the B right next to where the mouse is, okay? Which is a really useful thing if you're playing a video game. You can imagine if you're playing a first-person shooter game, instead of moving a B around the screen, you're moving your aiming crosshair across the screen, okay? All right, so there you go. I'm gonna go to the next one, which is a little bit more tricky, but also kind of useful. So follow the mouse advanced. This time we want it to shake -50 and 50 wherever the mouse X or mouse Y is. Okay, so that's what we're going to do here. It's very simple. We're just going to put a little addition in here, and to do that we'll just take plus random number between -50 and 50. So we're going to add a random number that is between -50 and 50 to my mouse X, and we're going to do the same thing for the Y. -50. Much easier to type this out than it is to drag a whole bunch of blocks in. And now when I run this program, that B, it's still going to be around the mouse, but the X and Y position are now going to be added, or they're going to be random, you know, within 100 of wherever the mouse is. And you can see that that causes the B to look like it's shaking a little bit. Challenge, add 3 more bees that follow the mouse in the same way to make a swarm of bees. No, I'm not going to do that, but that's how you can do it. Let me check and see if shake the salt, detect mouse movement. So this is going to give you one more block, which is the mouse did move, okay? And that is a useful thing to know, especially with your greeting card, if you're going to use, you know, your finger on the screen. So real quick, we'll put a if statement in here. So, and it kind of gives you that if mouse did move, and we don't need to add anything else. Then we're going to take that salt and give it a shake. I think it's rotation. Okay, so we'll just do salt rotation equals random number. I'll give it like -10 to 10. And here we go. So when the arrow moves, you can see the salt shaker shakes. If the arrow is still, or if my mouse is still, it does not shake. Okay, I think that pretty much covers it for lesson 16. All the most important things I've covered. Now you're going to be in good shape to go on to lesson 17, which is a greeting card, and do a good job on that.